While the Department of Budget and Management presented a revised medium-term fiscal program. The National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, presented the macroeconomic targets approved by the Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, which the President and the Cabinet members already confirmed. At para magbigay ng karagdagang detalye sa mga na pagkasunduan kahapon ukol dito, kasama natin ngayon si NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan. Good morning, Secretary Balisacan.
Good morning, Daphne, and members of the Malacañang Press Corps, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning again. Yesterday, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. convened the 16th full cabinet meeting to discuss, among others, the economics outlook and policy initiatives in the medium term. The President and the Cabinet confirmed the macroeconomic targets approved by the Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, during its 187th meeting last March 22. The revised targets for our headline indicators considered the country's recent economic performance in fiscal year 2023 and reflect the latest developments and expectations on external factors such as global demand and trade growth, oil price movements, and expected exchange rate and inflation trends. The DBCC revised gross domestic product, or GDP, growth target for 2024 is for 2024 to 6.0 to 7.0% from 6.5 to 7.5%. The DBCC also revised the growth target for 2025 to 6.5 to 7.5% from 6.5 to 8.0%, and retained the targets for of 6.5 to 8% for 2026 to 2028. Robust macroeconomic fundamentals will support this growth trajectory. These growth targets will sustain the country's position as one of the fastest growing emerging economies in the Asia-Pacific region. Moreover, at this pace of growth, we are still on track to achieving or to reducing poverty incidence from 18% in 2021 to single-digit level in 2028. The target range for inflation is retained at 2 to 4% for 2024 through 2028, following the government's assessment of recent internal and external developments that impact the prices of major commodity groups. The inflation outlook considers the monetary policy actions the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is undertaking and the non-monetary strategies and measures the government is implementing. The updated medium-term fiscal program, or MTFP, provides a more gradual but practical fiscal trajectory for the next few years. The government will further improve its performance through enhanced tax administration reforms focused on modernizing and enhancing the efficiency of the Philippine tax system. We will complement these measures by working with Congress to pass priority tax reform measures to recalibrate and further improve revenue mobilization and ultimately be more attuned to the country's fiscal requirements and current developments, domestic developments. With these expected reforms, we project revenues to reach 4.27 trillion pesos, or 16.1% of GDP in 2024, and rise to 6.078 trillion pesos, or 16.4% of GDP by 2028. We project deficit to GDP to fall from 5.6% in 2024 to 3.7% by 2028. leading to an expected debt-to-GDP ratio of 60.3% in 2024 and 55.9% by 2028. Meanwhile, the government disbursement program shall remain at about 20% of GDP, or an expected 5.7 trillion pesos in 2024 and 7.45 trillion pesos by 2028. The DBCC proposes a national budget of 6.2 trillion pesos for fiscal year 2025, with spending to remain focused on delivering high-impact and transformative public infrastructure projects and essential social services, especially for the poor and vulnerable. The budget shall support the Marcos administration's Build Better More program to stay on course and maintain infrastructure spending between 5 to 6% of GDP from 2024 through 2028. Meanwhile, the economic team identifies the following opportunities and risks. First, we continue to recognize and promote the crucial role of private sector investments in delivering public infrastructure and services, thereby alleviating the burden on the government's limited fiscal space. The full implementation of economic liberalization, investment-related and business-friendly reforms and initiatives, including the recently enacted Public-Private Partnership or PPP Code, and its accompanying implementing rules and regulations, will pave the way for greater investor interest and activity in the Philippines. We also expect the President's aggressive investment and trade promotion initiatives to continue to bear fruits as more and more recognize the country's promise as a destination of choice for businesses. We anticipate that the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino or 4PH program will boost our mining and manufacturing sectors as we expect the demand for construction materials to increase. We also expect the availability of more affordable housing units under the 4PH program to stimulate the real estate sector, contributing to creating dynamic and livable communities. Also, our higher growth forecast for the transport and digital sectors can be attributed to the foreseen impact of the Public Service Act on critical digital and physical connectivity or connectivity infrastructure in the years to come. However, we also identify domestic and external risk on the horizon. Climate change and extreme natural disasters such as El Niño will continue to pose risk to food security and the stability of food prices. Additionally, risk related to inflation, such as potential adjustments in transport fares, wages, and service utility fees higher than expected, could dampen household consumption. On the external front, the global economic slowdown may weaken external demand while increasing geopolitical and trade tensions could disrupt supply chains. Furthermore, general elections in major economies could lead to political shifts that may disrupt trade and investment. For 2024, the economic team will strongly advocate for the enactment of much-needed next-generation reforms to further enable the transformation of our economy and ensure sustained and inclusive growth. We are working hard with our partners in Congress to pass game-changing laws across various sectors, and we seek to make good on our promise of delivering on the executive and legislative common legislative agenda. In conclusion, the Marcos administration remains steadfast in its commitment to sustain the robust growth trajectory of the Philippine economy. The government's dedication transcends meeting statistical targets or numerical benchmarks. We direct our efforts toward realizing a strategic and compelling vision for our nation's prosperity even as we navigate a global economic landscape marked by various challenges within and without. Despite the anticipated risk, we remain optimistic about the country's sustained growth momentum as we strive for better development outcomes. We aspire to position the Philippines as a front-runner within our region and beyond, a beacon of inclusive progress and resilience. Therefore, let us forge ahead with purpose and pave the way for the realization of our country's ambition of may matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay para sa lahat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Balisacan, for the very encouraging and optimistic report. Questions from the audience? Okay, Raquel Bayan, Radio Pilipinas.
Good morning.
May we know, sir, bakit po kaya in-adjust yung GDP growth rate natin for this year, 2024, from 6.5% to 7%, ginawa po natin 6.0 to 7.0?
First, as I mentioned earlier, to take account of the performance in the last fiscal year, 2023. Second, to recognize the recent developments in the global economy, particularly trade and finance. We have seen there continuing slowdown of the global economy, and also taking into account the uptick in oil prices, and as well as the trends in the in inflation and interest rates, that not just in the Philippines but also in other countries, particularly our major trading partners like the US.
Sir, naka-apekto rin po ba dito sa adjustment na to yung naitala po nating 15 trillion peso na utang ng Pilipinas by February 2024?
No, I think let's clarify. No, in absolute value, of course, the debt is increasing. No, to 15 ilang trillion na yan. Yeah, but as a proportion of the size of the economy, that is falling, and in our revision of the targets, no, we continue the earlier plan to get that debt as a proportion of GDP decreasing, although we have to recast it in a way that is realistic and at the same time sustainable, no? Because our aim is to allow the opportunities for the economy to grow on a sustained basis. And as you see, our economy will retain its position as one of the fastest growing economies. The World Bank, in fact, just came out with a recent forecast for the Philippines and East Asian Pacific countries, no, and they see the Philippine economy as among the top best performing economies in 2024 and 2025, and I think that with the programs that we are putting in place, including appropriate use of fiscal and monetary policies, we should be able to sustain that, so that we still be, despite the reduced growth for 2024, we'll still be able to achieve the objective of reducing poverty to single-digit level by 2028, as earlier planned.
Sir, lastly na lang po from my end, despite all-time high po itong 15 trillion na naitala po natin sa February, can we say na under control pa rin po yung debt natin?
Oh yes, obviously, yeah, it is. We are actually in a very good position. The rule of thumb for emerging economies is 70% of GDP is debt. Now that's a threshold. No, we are moving from 60%, it's way below 60, to even lower. No, of 55, almost about 56% by the time we end the term of the current president. So. We are not only way below the threshold, but we are also we still also would want to decrease that that further.
Okay, Maricel Halili, TV5.
Hi, sir. Magandang umaga po. Sir, the adjustment on our GDP target for 2024, what does it mean for ordinary people? Paano po ito makakaapekto sa mga ordinaryong tao?
Well, not so much because the, well, let me start by saying that even though the range has been reduced from 6.5 to 7.5 to now 6 to 7%, that 6 to 7% is still quite very respectable. That even in the context of our history, economic history, but also, as I said earlier, in the context of our region, no, in the Asia Pacific region, that we still will remain one of the most or the fastest growing economy. For our people, of course, that will mean that the jobs that are available will continue to be robustly provided. As you can see, we have now reached a quite a low level of unemployment, no? Yung below 5% na unemployment rate natin ngayon. It's actually low compared to even developed country standards, no? But what we are aiming at is not just the level of employment. It's more importantly, it's the quality of the employment. That's why we are focusing on investments, no? Getting investments on a massive scale, improving our infrastructures, that investment will be profitable, would come in. And therefore, even as we see unemployment numbers to continue to be low, the quality of that of the employment produced will provide more income opportunities for our people, no? So that they will be able to get out. Most of our fellow countrymen will move out of poverty as soon as possible.
Okay, Alvin Baltasar, Radyo Pilipinas.
Secretary, magandang... Hi, sir.
Good morning.
Secretary, kahapon, in relation pa rin doon sa cabinet meeting, mukhang napag-usapan yung problema sa traffic. Can you share with us kung ano yung naging direktiba ni Pangulong Marcos? Since matindi rin naman ang tama sa ekonomiya ng traffic and base doon sa mga nakarang pag-aral, umaabot sa 3.5 billion per day yung nawawala sa ekonomiya ng traffic. Anong directive ni Pangulo dito?
So we had a very long discussion on the traffic issue, and the President gave instruction to everyone to submit their recommendations, how their respective offices will adjust and configure their work environment. But what the President really wants is a comprehensive, holistic approach to solving the traffic problem. Hindi yung piecemeal approach, no? As has been the case all these years. No? So we look, for example, in the planning of our transport system, we should be looking at intermodal transport system and see how they operate efficiently as a whole. We are building now the subway. We are building other expressways, bridges connecting Bataan and Cavite, and so on. But this have to be seen in the context of all the other transport systems, including bike lanes, motorcycle lanes like that, and as well as the feeder roads, and including the location of industries, residences, and so on. So the whole system it cannot be just seen as on a piecemeal basis, kasi kung may choke point in one, it affects the whole system. That's why we have to really look at it as a system, and that's the direction of the President.
Okay, Ivan Mayrina, GMA7.
Secretary, nabanggit niyo po yung mga opportunities and threats to economic growth. Hindi ho ba nag-figure do sa threats yung current geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea?
Indeed, it does. It is. That's why, as I mentioned, one of those risks that we considered in re-examining the prospects for our economy in the medium term. And despite that, we feel that the growth trajectory should not be affected adversely. We have to adjust to this global geopolitical tensions. That's what every economy is doing, and I think I don't see that we are exempted to that.
Okay. Alexis Romero, Philippine Star.
Secretary, you mentioned you expect a lower debt, GDP and deficit ratio. What gives you that optimism?
Well, it's our ability to number one, we understand what the problem is, and first it has to do with the fiscal measure, the fiscal measures. No, as I said earlier, we working to improve the tax collection efforts, tax measures to improve tax administration. We have to. There's a lot of space for improving tax administration. As you can see from, if you look at the other countries, mababa yung tax rates nila, pero mataas ang collection. Sa atin, mataas na yung tax rates natin, mababa ang collection. So there's so much space for improving tax administration. The second one, of course, is we have to identify new tax measures, and we have identified these tax measures, but we are quite realistic that that we need to focus on things that can improve the economic the tax administration, as well as those low-hanging fruits in the in new tax measures. No? So the other one is, as I said, you can, a country like us can address the debt problem if it's able to achieve growth, to get its economy growing faster than its debt, so that the debt ratio will fall. And that's the objective. No, we need to make the economy more efficient, more effective, and that's why the issue of efficiently using those fiscal resources. If you borrow, just like any responsible household, if they borrow, they should not worry about that debt if they are able to use it efficiently, because the incomes that they can generate from that borrowing will generate more than what they pay for the debt, right? An economy should be like that, and so as we are able to grow the economy at a much faster rate than the rate of our borrowing, we should be able to see that debt decreasing over time as a proportion of GDP.
But Secretary, yung iba doon, it's based on the assumption na nakahinge sa external developments like yung sa Congress. So you're assuming that they will pass these fiscal measures?
Oh yeah, we now have a mechanism, and we have been working quite closely with Congress through the Legislative Executive Development Council, and in fact, just a couple of 2 weeks ago, we met again to agree on the priority measures to ensure that, and they share. Congress also passed a resolution at the beginning of the administration, approving or confirming our fiscal measures, including the targets for and the debt and the fiscal measures. No? So we have that mechanism for working collaboratively and a smooth coordination between Congress and the executive branch.
Okay, Kyle Atienza, Business World.
Good morning, sir. Sir, with the inflation expected to have quickened further in March, BSP inflation forecast of 3.4 to 4.42%. The central bank is likely to remain hawkish. How do we ensure that these hawkishness does not affect growth? Also, sir, food prices seem to be driving the CPI. What is the government doing to make sure prices of rice and other commodities, again, don't spiral out of control? Also, last question. Do you expect the BSP to quickly mirror potential US Fed cut next month or later this year? How crucial is this to economic growth?
Well, yeah, the government and as I mentioned earlier in we are committed to achieving an inflation within the range of 2 to 4%. Right. So even as we saw the inflation pick up a bit last month, we don't see that inflation going out of that band. So that for this year, we intend to keep that and work very hard. We'll work very hard to address the non-monetary measures that are contributing to that peak, in the or to that resurgence of inflation in recent months. No, you're right. A big part of that inflation is coming from food price increases, and we know that part of that is due to the inefficiency in the market system, and we have to work hard to reduce that inefficiency. And our Department of Agriculture has proposed to the government, to the President, to the Cabinet, a package of measures to improve that efficiency, like, for example, improving the logistics and distribution systems, for investing and bringing in the private sector to invest in those logistics and distribution, so that the differential between what the farmers receive for their produce and what consumers pay for food will not be as wide as it is now, no? But it would be reduced, and that would address inflation. We are also monitoring closely the developments of the global food markets, because, for example, for rice, a lot of that inflation in rice is coming from the fact that the global food prices, rice prices, have continued to be to increase. Although the expectation and the global forecasts show that with the weakening of El Nino by the mid of this year, we expect global rice prices to start declining, and so it's I think that looking at the rest of the year, we should be seeing those price pressures on our prices to moderate.
Sir, I just repeat my last question. So do you expect the BSP to quickly mirror potential U.S. Fed cut next month later this year? And how crucial is this to economic growth?
To continue what?
To quickly mirror, sir, a potential U.S. Fed cut.
I'm sorry, I don't get that.
Rate cut, sir.
The cuts in the interest rates, the policy rates. Okay. No, as of course the policy rates of the BSP are guided by many factors. No? The inflation is one, but there are also interest rate differentials, say between the Fed, U.S. Fed, and the Philippines, and there are also the exchange rate movements. So they adjust that now. But I think in recent months, a big part of those adjustments have to do with inflation. No? So as we moderate, as we manage that inflation within that band of 2 to 4% for this year and the next years, we don't see that BSP will keep its policy rates. It will eventually go down as the numbers become more firm. I mean the inflation numbers.
Thank you, sir.
Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror.
Hey, good morning, sir. Balisahan.
Good morning.
What is the impact of the lower target on BIR and BOC collection performance for the year?
Yeah, well, it's chicken and egg. Well, the lower GDP growth will obviously affect the BIR and BOC collections. But on the other hand, as I was saying earlier, improving tax administration will be the bigger source of that increase in revenues. The program as proposed and as approved and confirmed by the by our cabinet, by the president, still shows quite a robust growth of BIR, of tax revenues, particularly those coming from BIR and the Bureau of Customs. So, in other words, even with the slightly lower growth forecast, revenues from these two agencies are expected to rise, to increase.
Sir, that's question item 2. How much of this decision to reduce targets is attributed to higher interest rates? Would we have a better chance of attaining our targets with lower key policy rates?
Of course, yeah. But these policy rates have long effects, no? For example, the lower performance last year of the economy and expectedly slower performance this year from, as I mentioned earlier we were forecasting or targeting 6.5% to 7.5%. Now we have reduced that to 6 to 7%. It's partly due to that we still feel the high policy rates last year impacting on the economy this year. And also among the other factors that I mentioned earlier, like the oil prices this year are expected to be higher than next year. So yes, but again, if you achieve the target, the mid-range of the 6 to 7, 6.5, that's still almost as good as that earlier projection of having a growth of 6.5 to 7.5 last year.
Okay. Neil Jerome Morales from Reuters.
Hi, Secretary. Good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
Secretary, just to complete the data set you were mentioning kanina, the deficit. So, can you share with us the deficit for deficit program 2025 to 27 and foreign exchange assumptions as well that we have? Thank you.
Okay. I think I have those numbers for you. Yeah. For the deficit. Okay, where am I there? Oh, all right. As I said earlier, let me go through the assumptions. No? As I said earlier, the inflation will be kept at 2 to 4% from 2024 to 2028. The Dubai crude oil price we are assuming 70 to 90%. It's actually picking up as we speak. But next year it will be. It's expected to settle down to a lower range. The treasury bills, as I said, that's still affected by the policy rates in the past, and so it's higher this year than next year. The exchange rate, again, the range is higher this year from 55 to 57, or lower this year than what's expected next year. 2025 is 55 to 58. No? The exports, by the way, is also the one that's expected. That's caused that reduction in the target for this year. We expect the goods exports to decline from the original assumption of 5% to 3% this year. We kept the same assumption for the other years. Okay. Where's my number for the deficit? As I said earlier, for the deficit, we have. I think by this time, as the DBM should have released already the DBCC, the complete report, and And there you have this. You will see the numbers for each of the years and the deficit. No?
Right. Okay. Okay, Kathy Valiente, Manila Times.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Sir, since we revised our economic target for 2024, are we still on track po dun sa ating pag-achieve sa upper middle income economy status by 2025?
Yes, we are.
So hindi to, sir, makaka-apekto dun sa ating
No,
goal?
because with 6.5%, 6 to 7%, is still quite a high growth that we still fall within the realm of possibility for our entry to the upper middle income class. The threshold of 4,000, almost 4,500 US dollars in gross national income per capita should be in there.
Okay. Ano po? Sir, sa ano lang po, sa Tariff Commission, sa EO, Executive Order 12 on revision nung sa tariff para i-lower yung tariff ng mga e-vehicles. Sabi po kahapon natapos na yung public hearings. May recommendation na po ba? And ano po yung recommendation at sagot ng Pangulo?
Yeah. We haven't received the recommendation yet. That would be transmitted to us, and once we receive that, that will be the Tariff Committee on Related Matters will meet. That's composed of the NEDA, DTI, and other agencies. And then from there, we will, depending on the decision, there we will forward it to the President and the Cabinet at the NEDA board for confirmation.
Okay. Mikhail Flores, Reuters.
Good morning, Secretary. Sir, if you look at the World Bank's latest projections, they're both below the government's targets, 5.8, I think this year, 5.9 next year. What gives government confidence of a higher growth path? Where will we find that growth, and what will drive that growth? Because the multilaterals are perhaps saying that the global trade disruptions and the geopolitical tensions could impact on our growth prospects.
Yeah. No, this is not the first time that the World Bank many of the other agencies are more conservative than us. No, I've been in governments for so many years, especially during the time when I was in the Aquino administration. Many of the international government agencies, World Bank, ADB, IMF, at the time were telling us that the growth of the economy cannot be higher than 5%. We proved them wrong. We achieved an average of 6.3% for that 6-year duration. So, and I think that even last year, 2022, right? We grew at 7.6%. Nobody look at their forecast of the economy if they were that high. So I mean, in government, we don't forecast. We target the growth, and we use the policy tools, fiscal, monetary, and other administrative measures to see whether what you are targeting is realistic, achievable, or not. Most forecasters are just reading past trends, what the trends, recent data are telling them, right? There are no policy tools there. So that's the difference. We are targeting, and when we target, we have the policy tools as instruments to influence the numbers that we want to achieve.
Okay, go ahead.
Question, sir, on the deficit program, because you've adjusted the deficit program to 3.7% of GDP by the end of 2028.
Yes.
I was wondering, is the government giving up on further lowering the deficit to GDP cap, and will you consider adjusting it downwards further if you see improvements in tax administration, given that the government has already signaled that new revenue measures, there will be no additional revenue measures except for the ones that have already been announced.
Yeah. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, no, not having too many tax measures, new tax measures, does not mean that that revenues will not improve significantly. No, as I said earlier, there's much scope for tax administration, and I think that with the digitalization. The digitalization kasi has created also some problems for the tax agencies. No, many of the e-commerce are not captured by the e-commerce activities. No, are not captured by the tax system. No, with the digitalization, when we can digitalize all these transactions and link them with our tax systems, tax infrastructure, then you should be able to improve your tax administration, and that's what we are counting on. The improvement in tax, because as we can see, yung ang sinabi ko kanina, you look at our other countries, our neighbors, mababa naman ang tax rates nila, pero ang taas ng revenue effort, no? Yung collection, no? Sa atin, mababa yung collection. So there's so much space for improving your tax administration. You just have to be, to push that envelope harder. So that's one. The second one that I want to note is we would want to grow fast, no? Particularly, it's an investment-driven growth, no? Which would mean that we need to get the private sector come in, but you can complement that with borrowing, particularly for infrastructure and our social sector, no? The health and education, for example, and our social protection system. We need to invest into those a lot. So we need to continue borrowing, and so it's not in our interest to drastically reduce the deficit. It's because that then will impact on your growth. I think for us is what we want to ensure is that as we borrow and as we make use of facilities like ADB or World Bank, we have to ensure that these projects are high impact projects that they will lead to higher productivity for the economy, so that we can raise the potential of the economy to grow faster in the future. Yan ang trick kasi dito is, as of now, as I think I mentioned this last time, if you look at the current the labor, the capital, etc., the situation, our long-term potential is something like 6%, no? But you can improve that potential by investing in infrastructure, addressing the cost of doing business, and so improving the quality of our labor by upskilling, retraining, so that you can that potential growth can be elevated, and so we can sustain the growth of the economy. Sana masustain natin for the next 20 years, no? Because if you can sustain that for the next 20 years, then you should be able to be like, what South Korea is or was when it became a part of the advanced countries. No?
Okay.
Iwan performance ng Philippine economy. Can you give us an assessment? It's still early, but can you give us a preview of how the economy performed in the first quarter of the year?
It's still. I think so far in terms of the economic environment this quarter versus last quarter, I think it was worse last quarter. High inflation of 7%. You don't see that inflation now. So I would see better consumption economy. Then. people are not likely expecting further increases in the policy rates, so that again will be a positive force for, confidence of people to spend and to invest. The labor market, as I see it today, is still very robust, performing quite well. So I am quite confident about the performance of the economy in the first quarter.
Thank you. One more question from Jean Mangalus, Inquirer.net.
Hi, Zach. So President Marcos said that an 8% economic growth would be possible by the end of his term. How feasible do you think this is at this rate we are going?
No, 6.5. When what we he approved, confirmed yesterday, it's 6.5 to 8% in the medium term. So,
do you think po maabot niya yung 8% by the end of his term?
Well, if the 2028 is we are targeting 6.5 to 8. If we hit the 8, we'll be so lucky, right? But as we see it, there are I see if the interest rates will continue to fall, there's a huge housing backlogs that if we those come in, they will drive the economy in a substantial way. We have opportunities for green metals. If we can get our acts together to use, get green metals, mining, work for us. Of course, we have to address issues on environmental and sustainability. But there are many drivers that we can build upon.
Okay. Final question, Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror.
Sir, does NEDA already have an impact assessment on the proposed charter change? And will the charter change figure impact on the GDP growth targets of the government until 2028?
And that's another, if we can get those amendments that we would want in the Constitution, particularly in the public services, education, in I think then you could achieve even more. No, you can get additional sources of growth. We are counting on that those will come in, but they are with respect to the amendments of the Constitution, they're a bit sa lower end of the tail end of the administration, because even if you are able to open it now, it will take time for that to be felt, because investment does not come overnight. Ang tagal kong minsan, like a new power generation, for example, mga gestation yan 3-5 years na. Hindi ba, even if the board decides not to come in, it will take 5 years before they can actually operate. So that's how that's why sustaining the environment, the economic environment, the policy environment is so crucial, that they are able to see the long term in our economy. Hindi kaya ngayon napaka-importante sa atin yung sustainability of policies, hindi yung forward backward kind of thing, because that does not inspire confidence.
Mm-hmm. Also to add to that, the World Economic Forum about 2 weeks ago had mentioned the importance of the economic reforms that President Marcos' administration already had put in place, and if this continues, we have what he mentioned, a $2 trillion economy.
Yeah,
in like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So very optimistic, and thank you so much, Secretary Balisacan, for giving us this brief. And thank you, Malacañang Press Corps.
Thank you.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Umaga.